Hello, everybody. Today I want to talk about work for people with disabilities. And I think that this is an area that has really been not really exploited to its fullest extent. I don't think it, I know it. It's not being exploited to its fullest extent. And it's not a new concept. So over 40 years ago, we were talking about people with very significant disabilities working. There were many kinds of opportunities that were created for this to happen. But as always, with government intent, interest, um, capacity, all the things that kind of get in the way, even when these things were started, they seemingly didn't continue for very many people. So when I'm talking today about these things, I know that there are some people in really good jobs and have been for some time. And I know that there's people who are very good employers. And I know that there are some job coaches who are really amazing at what they do. So we're all on the same page about that. But I want to talk today about those things that might be the barriers and the benefits to people with disability if they were able to have real meaningful work with real wages. I think families have always understood the importance of having something meaningful and real to do. Long before anyone else was thinking about, they were thinking about that idea of people being able to get out of the house, to go somewhere and to actually be with other people, as opposed to just being stuck in the house all day. And I think in Queensland in particular, the whole movement from some services around employment, shelter workshop employment, and for those people who are deemed not able to do shelter work employment, to go to day programs, was born. Unfortunately, I don't think that those kinds of situations have really improved the lives of people with disability in the way that we might like to think they would or could. Because once again, we're in a place where people are only able to do their recreation or their work with other people with disabilities. Not a problem with that, except that it's a very limited group. And some people have been like in a birth to death situation in that situation. So there were young people I know who are not so young now, but when they were little, went to school together. Then they left school and went straight to the workshop or the day program with the same people they'd been to school with. And some of those people did that on the same place, at the same place as they'd actually gone to school. So for some people, we were talking about transition to adulthood last time. For these people, there was no opportunity to ever even really think about growing up or actually moving outside the realms of service land. Their families felt very secure, and I think people with disability probably thought that was the only thing that was available to them. But we've been dabbling in this concept, as I said, for a very long time, but we don't seem to be getting very far. And certainly my experience in job, employment for people with disabilities, which is now quite a long time ago, I started to see that there were these real barriers that people don't even talk about that really, really make a huge difference to whether people with disability are ever going to get a go. I think the first and most obvious barrier is that hardly anyone thinks that people with disability can be productive. This is such a major issue, isn't it? Like, if people don't think you're productive, how on earth would you ever get a job? And if it's not just the employer who thinks that, the regular employer who thinks it would be much easier just to have a regular person come and do the job, even if your job coach and the people around you don't necessarily think that you can be productive or that you could be the employer that people would want to have, that's a major barrier when they go to actually market the skills and abilities of the individual. We just don't seem to be very good at working out what those things are. So, and then I think because those services that are supposed to get people work are so inept, then what we find is people are doing endless work experience. Work experience is kind of okay, but really should be done at school, in my opinion. By the time you leave school, you should be, at least at some way ready for work, which are very clearly people aren't. And so people get into rounds of work experience, which the job coach and maybe the family know was only ever going to be time limited. But the person with disability may be thinking that they can't keep a job. And maybe people in the community think that person can't keep a job because they see the person in the job, it's celebrated, and then they're out again. So work experience needs to be used very, very carefully so that we don't end up in this kind of round of that, as opposed to real work. all the theory around work says that people need to learn the job in the job. Learning in relevance is one of the most powerful things that we can do for people with disability in these kinds of situations. And so there's a thing, Mark Gold, who I spoke about the other day. The Mark Gold Institute, which still exists, does a lot of work around this stuff. If you look online, you can find them, and I'll put that in a comment later. But the Mark Gold Institute talks about discovery. So really working with that person to understand more about what their skills, abilities, talents, and interests are in terms of work as a way to set up a really good job situation for the person. I don't see that happening in employment services at all. I think that often people with disability not only don't have a work ethic, but don't have a concept of work, particularly when people have been in the very special settings, the school, but even in like integrated settings. One of the things that school's supposed to teach us is, how to go to work and do things in an orderly fashion. So the bell rings, we go in, the bell rings, we go out and have morning tea, the bell rings, we come back in, the teacher's telling us, we're going to get this finished, by the next break. We're being taught how to kind of work to a rhythm. Now, there might be some of you, me included, that think, don't really like the idea of teaching people how to be, so it's just such kind of that clockwork kind of idea. But actually, it is what we all learn at school. And actually, it is something that really makes a difference when we go to work, how we're going to manage our work and how we're going to be seen as a productive, valued person in our community. I think the other thing is, I wrote down here that people with disability may not have ambition for work. I don't mean that people don't have ambition. I think that ambition is often squashed or never discussed, and no one ever asks. And maybe the person, if you did ask, couldn't tell you, because they're either got severe communication impairment or because it's a concept they've never really talked about or discussed before. But that lack of ambition to work and the lack of skill around work areas is a major issue that I don't think, I know does not get identified or worked on in the way it needs to. It might be identified, but people don't know what to do about it, which is a big, big problem. And then I think one of the major issues around the way employment services work is they use the incentives, to get people into a job. Now, getting an incentive to get to a job is it's a path to perdition, in my opinion. It may get you in the door, and the view is get in the door, and then after the time the incentives, stop, when the employer's being paid to keep the person there, that person will be skilled up, and the employer will have a kind of connection to him or her. I have to say that hasn't happened very often. And in my opinion, when people start to talk about the job incentives, you can be pretty sure that they don't really know what else to do. And so they don't have any other way to market other than to throw money at the problem. And that doesn't seem to really help in any way. And I think in many cases, in the case of employers, it's a cynical exercise. Or maybe like a good neighbourly kind of thing that says, oh, well, it doesn't cost me much to have him here, so I'll do it. Because, if it doesn't work out, I'll just let him go. Or when the money runs out, I'll just let him go, which is actually more to the point. I think the other major issue for families is the issue of the pension. And the issue of the pension looms large in the worry the families have about income for their son or daughter. In the days when I was working in employment, Centrelink at the time had an arrangement with disability services or whatever it was called at that time. It said if a person got a job, then they could, even if they were working to the point where they weren't qualifying for the pension, that they would stay in the books of Centrelink for over 2 years to make sure that job was permanent. And I think there's all the talk now about everything integrating around the NDIS. This is another thing that needs to be kind of discussed and negotiated again so that people do have a kind of a guarantee that they will be able to get back on that pension if the job fails, because sometimes that's what happens. I think when you think about the benefits of work, one of the biggest things for me, we talked about connection last time. The real big issue for me is a better connection in community and actually connection to workmates. So when we're asking ourselves how will people find people to be friends with, one of the biggest things we need to say is that no service, no parent, and no really talented worker is going to be able to create friendships for people with disability. that's actually between the two people involved, you know, the person with disability and the person who finds that individual, like sees that person as a potential friend and then becomes a friend. We can create a fertile bed for that, and one of the fertile beds, places for the fertile bed, is at work, because at work people get to see each other every day, and sometimes there's opportunities for things to happen at work that wouldn't happen if you weren't there. So you know, celebrations at Christmas, a birthday cake on your birthday, opportunities to maybe go out to lunch on the weekend every now and again if there was something you know coming up to celebrate. Opportunities that we don't get if we're not there. Can't be there. You can't be in it if you're not there. So, very powerful concept, I think, of a better connection in community if you're working. Of course, it doesn't hurt to have a uniform, does it? So if you've got a uniform and you're wearing it when you go to the shops after work, people start to see that you're working in a company, you know, that this is a very big increase in image. You know, really, really helps people's image and changes minds in the community, I think. And that sense of belonging that we start to build, you know, when we talked about the 5 frameworks for accomplishment, those 3 first ones are presence. So when you go to work, you're present somewhere. Your participation, so now you have to be at work and doing the things you need to do with other people. And then the third thing in that framework is a real valued role. And if there's any role more valued in community than work, outside, you know, your roles in family or whatever, I don't think I know one of it. So it's a very powerful thing to actually really increase the status of the person through going to work. And I think that has a real knock-on effect, doesn't it? Because once a person goes to work and shows that they're a good employee and they're getting money and they're paid and they're happy and the employer is happy and people are saying, you know, this is a great thing, I think that there's a renegotiation of image and relationship in family, you know, and especially extended family. And then I think a renegotiation in community about who this person is and what their potential is, which is a very exciting opportunity. Maybe the most important one from the position of the person with disability is that when this happens, you know, when a person gets a job and keeps the job and has the money and the uniform and is now out every day busy, that there's going to be an increased level of self-esteem. And if there's anything in the world that people with disabilities could do with a bit more of, a level of self-esteem over who they are and their value in the world, their own valuing of themselves and the valuing from other people. This is a major, major outcome from work that I think really does need to be truly appreciated and understood. And the pride in, you know, having pride in your achievements. I think it's, I've seen it. It's very wonderful when you see it. It's quite wonderful. I think the other thing is that people go to work, and it might be that their social skills weren't that great, but actually being around other people, there's a natural encouragement and a natural opportunity to copy other people, to see how other people operate at work, how they come to work, how they dress to come to work, their approach and their attitude to work, the way they greet and manage their relationships with each other. Not always perfect, we know, don't we? But actually, probably pretty special for a lot of people who have never really seen that, you know, in any way that that would really have impressed them enough to help the person understand that more, you know, more effective, to be more effective in that way. And the last one, I think, in the benefits is every time a person gets a job, keeps a job, and becomes valued as an employee in that company, there's a change of opinion in community. And when there's a change of opinion in community, we get the opportunity to see people with disability as a whole, as more valued, more productive, and it allows the opportunity for community to see that person in a different kind of way. And if there's anything that we need to do to really, really increase opportunities for people, it's going to be that the community starts to see the potential of people with disability. That's not going to happen while people are in sheltered workshops or day programs. And let's not kid ourselves about day programs now that might have got themselves a bit gussied up. But actually, I think it would be a very good thing if your son or daughter is in a place where that's happening, that you go and have a good look to see just how much is happening there, the level of happiness, the level of belonging, and what happens for him or her in that setting. I'm not saying that they're all bad. I am saying that they are segregation and congregation. People are put together based on the idea that disability is the common factor. There is no safety there, just like there is no safety anywhere, no true safety. Safety comes from being in community where people see what's going on. So I think that this is a very big and important thing to decide about where people should be and what we can do as an employer, as a person who's working as a job coach, if you're listening, or anywhere that you are, what could happen or what could be done to increase this concept of people with disability, both within themselves, with their parents, and employers in the world. How could we actually really upgrade this idea and help people have a more effective kind of opportunity for work? So I'm interested to know what people are doing. There's a lot of people doing some very interesting things around Australia. I don't know about the world, where that people have started micro businesses and other things because they stopped waiting for something to happen, and so created their own concept of how this person would be meaningfully organized through the day. So I would be interested to know what people have done in that area, as well as the idea of people getting work. My go-to is always that the services who are funded to do this work should be doing it to perfection. This is not a job for people who are faint-hearted. It's not a job for people who don't really see the opportunities for people with disability. It's not a job for people who've got no expectation. And sure as it's not a job for people who've got no skill. So sadly, I'm just going to say this here, I don't think I'm the only person saying it, that the skill level in those employment services is very low and the expectation is even lower. So this is a problem in terms of how we're going to get people working. But this does not mean that we can stop, or that we can stop expecting, or that we can stop putting pressure to say we want things to be done in a much more meaningful and powerful way. Let's get people to work, folks. Lovely to talk to you again. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like it. And please write a comment, because then we can talk more about the subject. Next time, I'm going to talk about micro businesses, those things where people have given up on the employment services and therefore created other opportunities for their sons and daughters to actually have a meaningful thing to do all day. Bye.